Hi everyone, welcome back to Mirror Mind. I'm really apologizing because it's been, I think, 3-4 months, but life was happening, especially December. From December, funny enough, Brennan was telling me that's most of his clients as well since December, they haven't done any episode.
Yeah.
So I guess
hangover.
some serious hangover.
Festive
But
hangover.
anyway, welcome back. I have a very interesting brother here today. His name is Ben. We met at the high table. It's a very special place with very, very interesting people that I feel, that's one of the reasons I called you here, that I feel people should be listening to what you're telling them, and I think it's going to lay the ground for perhaps a different way of living and a different, completely different race of people. But it has to start with a dialogue.
Yeah.
So welcome, my brother.
Thank you so much, boss.
Please, if you can introduce yourself to them, what you do, and
All right.
you can take it from there.
My name is Ben Mkabele. I am the provincial chairperson of the Youth Council in Gauteng. I am also the youth sector leader of the AIDS Council in Gauteng. Subsequently, the deputy chairperson of the Civil Society Forum in Gauteng. So I've got a lot of civil society responsibilities that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So over and above that, I'm an activist. So I think those are some of the circles that got me introduced to you in the activism circles. So that sums up who I am through what I do. Yeah.
Now, welcome, my brother.
Thank you.
Today I want to, you told me you wanted the subject, the topic, what we're going to talk about. And like any other guest, I never tell them. Because, people have a tendency,
Yeah.
I want it to be as natural as possible. I know you're into the world of politics.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's some things you might not come forward and put it in words, but let's try to be as honest as possible. Don't be too political.
No, but I'm not a politician. I'm an activist. So
activist, but there's a lot of politics involved in it.
the politics are everywhere, my brother. Yeah. I can tell you about, even in your own family structure, there are politics.
The whole
There's
thing
a hierarchy.
is political. Yeah, for sure.
So politics are not, let me put it this way. If you're not in politics, if you're not doing politics, politics are doing you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. But I think what I'm trying to say is that, okay, first of all, I want to have a really, really serious, because to me this is no entertainment.
Okay.
It's that's my way of contributing to society.
True.
Yeah, so let's have that serious conversation, but it doesn't have to, it can also be fun, you see, as serious as it can be.
Yeah. I've got a theory. I've got a principle. If it's not fun, I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
it gets boring.
Life is very finite. Both you're born and then you die. So life happens between those two events of birth and death. Now, you have a choice. It's either you spend majority of that life wallowing, or you just become happy. So from experience, when I was a kid, like primary school or something, I knew that the moment I start enjoying my holidays, they're almost over. So it is on that principle that I decided everything that I do, I'm just going to make sure I enjoy myself. Keep on laughing. So maybe that's why God gave me some dimples. So I can just keep on laughing. Yeah. So even in tragic situations, I always see the silver lining. I don't despair. So there's no gloom and despondency when it comes to me. So everything is fun. For me. And of course, everything is also serious at the same time. But if I do not have some level of enjoyment, for example, I do the work I do for free. So I can say I'm a human rights activist. So, but it brings me joy. So it fills me every time I attend my meetings. I facilitate open doors for young people. Every time I'm sitting in platforms and meeting with other activists to ensure we facilitate a conducive environment for my demographic and the people in general, I get filled. So that's where I get my enjoyment. So, of course, some things are tragic. We stay in a society that has a lot of social ills, but I also know that all moments will pass. But if we work towards resolving them, we might get to a better place.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So, is it right to say that you deal with a lot of young people?
Of course, yeah. We deal with. Look, my organization is purely made up of youth organizations. So we are an umbrella body that is made up of other youth formations. So it's not actual individuals, but these are youth formations that come together to constitute the council. So I'm a product of youth organizations. So I can't say we deal with anything else. No. We deal strictly with young people here. But young people are at the cornerstone of human development.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we do in our lives throughout, we probably start to imagine them at a young age and work towards them. So if it's your career, you invest it when you're still young. If it's your ideology, your mindset, when you're still young.
Yeah.
So,
can you give me a general feeling of the youth in South Africa? What is the attitude towards life in terms of towards life in general, but also towards the whole economy, politics, and what is the average young South African struggling with?
Well, I think it's unfair to try and pick out an average young South African. I think maybe we should start with it from this perspective. There's a book that I love a lot by Bessie Head called Maro. So in that novel, she comes to a conclusion and she says, heredity, nothing. Environment, nothing. Environment, everything. Yes. So you do know that quote.
No, I just concluded that.
Yeah. So environment, everything. So if we're trying to speak about the general mindset of an average young South African, it would be unfair for us to speak about those mindsets, because there are some people that have more depth than others in terms of their outlook. There are some people who are more learned than others, but there are some people who are more intelligent than others. So we have understood that with this demographic, with this strata, it is almost impossible to isolate a basic standard case of young people. But it is easy for us to deduce the environment, because we are all affected by it. So who's to say the ideas of freedom in our lifetime were born in the minds of young people in the 1800s, and they started to work towards the freedom that we have, close to 113 years of pushing and ensuring that we get at least the political freedom that we have. So young people in South Africa are very energetic, very creative, and the evidence is there. We listen to Amapiano. Before this, they engineered another genre called Kwaito, the young people of not so long ago. So young people are very robust, very smart. I think South African young people are amongst the ones that I revere the most, not because of the fact that I'm a South African, but I think something is in the water. So the environment, however, is not conducive. We still want economic freedom in our lifetime, because that is what brings us together, because we appreciate the political freedoms that we have, even though we are accused of not fully exercising our political freedom through votes. We have seen there's now something called youth voter apathy. But
youth what?
Youth voter apathy. So young people are not voting, and they're not fully exercising their rights that they have, including politically going to the ballot box and contributing on which...
Why do you think that is?
There's a number of factors. The first one is there is misinformation about the entire voting process. So disgruntled electorates are pushing a narrative that if you don't vote, then you can punish whoever is there because of social and service delivery problems that we might be having as a country. Then there is also another one that says, because of politics have not been seen as being productive, a productive contributor to the lives of our people, people then started to withdraw themselves from the discourse to say, yeah, well, you always take decisions on our behalf. So the electorate they did not feel involved in the broader decision-making body of South Africa. And this is what I get across. Even political organizations that call themselves opposition parties and so forth. So they don't feel invested to politically exercise themselves. They would rather exercise themselves economically. So it is something that we need to correct, because you cannot be a young person, as I said when I began this podcast, if you don't do politics. Politics are doing you. So young people are not coming forth. But we are doing well. We had, I think, the world's biggest jump in literacy in the past 30 years. So we are also having a large number of graduates. In fact, I like the discussion now that we need more graduates in the technical spectrum of education. So we need more engineers, and but we are not missing out on the literacy of our people. So I cannot accuse them of being illiterate, because every year we're having at least 700,000 graduates. Those are degrees, diplomas, and whatever discipline academically that they would do. The other thing that the government responded with is the establishments of TVET colleges. So TVET colleges are vocational colleges where you can come in, do your practicals for, and to do electrical engineering, plumbing. You can be certified at those institutions. So they've supported them, and we have a lot of TVET colleges. So the Department of Higher Education actually needs to be applauded for that. There's also a challenge, but I think let's not exhaust it for now. But going back to youth voter apathy is also contributed by the fact that now they are graduates and then they're sitting at home, there are no jobs. So the economy is not conducive enough to absorb them. And then capital in its nature.
In that case, when such happens, you graduate, but then you have all that energy, but you don't know how to put it to use, or where to. What do you do with? What does the youth tend to do in this case?
In this case, look, the youth are very mobile. So you would find people who are working in, I'd be a waiter with my masters, in hydro engineering. So youth are agile. So they would work in service industries, but it is depressing to know that. 4 years dedicated, you worked, then the economy is not ready to absorb you. So there are many factors to that. Business always likes to say the labor laws are not conducive. So one could answer yes, if you're looking at the Chinese model, how they essentially don't have labor laws, but economic growth has been at 10.5 for the past 22 years straight, including during COVID. So that's amazing. But we have fought a long battle with labor laws in this country, and I don't think it would be fair for us to renege on labor laws just so that business could be happier to exploit more people. And then because the market, people like to say the market and hide behind their own ideas. So the market has also moved. And what kind of movement am I talking about? The market has now adopted a more technologically based workforce. I'll tell you about artificial intelligence and its developments. We've reached a level that is comparable to the early 1900s, where you found industrial revolution, but this is the fourth industrial revolution. Every day there's new technology, and all that technology replaces a worker. Now, it is not the fault of the worker, because society must move, but we need to find new mechanisms of participating in the economy in a conducive and constructive way. So now you are sitting there, you do not have, maybe you have like a computer science degree. You got it in the year 2004. Right now it's obsolete.
Completely outdated.
It's completely outdated. So those are things that happen because life...
Is there no risk for a revolution to counter that technological revolution? Because, if you have all that youth sitting frustrated, and there's no hope of actually, because I mean, technology is evolving in such a high speed that it will be almost, well, not impossible, but very hard to catch up with. So, what are those guys are not gonna get pissed and do something about it?
Well, they are going to get pissed. Look, people in general cannot survive on just lounging and watching computers do everything. When I came here, I saw a server room, right? And I remember one of the first servers that I saw. It was big. It filled the entire room. And now we have super fast computers. You cannot stop technology.
It shouldn't be stopped. I don't even think it should.
But what we can do is assist ourselves and acclimatize to the changing life. So this means that me and you, as young as we are, we should know how to code. It should come natural. How to code, how to speak to the technology world. And those are things that I think we have advised the government to do, and they are doing them. MICT is upskilling young people. So now it's no longer about understanding Microsoft and Excel. Now it's beyond that. People now, they talk about Python, So people are creating new writing languages. So the system is really developed. So we also need to equip ourselves. But you must also remember that, as you're saying about the revolt, I thought about all those movies I grew up watching, and 300, Cyborg.
Yeah.
So that is like apocalyptic revolts. I mean, I love The Matrix. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I love it too, yeah.
Yeah, so artificial intelligence and The Matrix, we always worry when we look at that. I mean, Terminator 1, Terminator 2 and 3, there's a lot of technological development that I don't think we're going to stop because we are unemployed. What we need to do is find a way to plug ourselves in. And we should also make sure that we're in industries that technology cannot replace. Yeah, so
quite.
There are many that needs a human touch, my brother. So
yeah, for sure there are many, but it seems the way I look at this technology, there's a learning process to it that is a bit scary.
Yeah, scary, no?
Yeah, scary in terms of it can really replace any human interference.
Yeah.
So I have one more concern before we get into that. So you have, what I'm concerned with this youth, let's say the ones that
are not employed, yeah.
Employed, they've used up all their energy to get that education. Now there's some sort of disconnect with the real world. Now, at some point in your life, you tend to become a little bit intellectually lazy, I guess. You don't want to learn again new things because, I mean, you've done something,
sure, disappointed
about it, and now someone is promising you that it'd be better if you do more learning. So you tend not to trust that one. That's how you get the Pablo Escobar easily out of them. Because, I mean, why follow the rules of society? Is there any such program, especially in your area of
work?
Yeah, that you try to fix this issue, not to rely on time to fix this?
Well, I think South Africa has explained over the government has explained over the couple of years that unemployment is one of our biggest problems. I mean, we have, I think now, maybe the third highest unemployment rate in the world. And it's not something that we are happy about, but it is a consequence of economic systems and how they are placed in our country. Capital has money. Look, there is about 3 trillion or 4 trillion that's sitting cash in the hands of companies in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. But they're not incentivized enough to plow that money back into society. So if these companies were to reinvest that money back into society, expand projects, it will not only increase their bottom line, but it will lessen the unemployed burden of South Africa. So, but now they're not doing that.
Why?
So, remember, capital has a mind of its own, and they're not compelled by the state to do certain things because we are in a democracy. and it's a free market democracy. So I cannot come into your bank account, boss, and tell you what you should spend.
Yeah.
Because the moment I do, then we are no longer a free democratic country. We start becoming something like a socialist state, which is perhaps a solution that we must ponder and keep on the table, so that in a socialist state we can have mutual beneficiary, so that people can enjoy the fruits, especially the products of that are coming from your land. I mean, South Africa is literally standing on two sectors in the main: the agricultural sector and the mining sector. So while the finance sector is proving a lot and the administration sector is contributing a large sum, but those are the two greatest players in South Africa. So this means for you to have economic expression in South Africa, you must either be a farmer or a miner. So now, both of us sitting on this table, we are not skilled in any of this. I don't even think we're doing subsistence farming.
Yeah. And there must be some restriction to getting into that sector too.
Of
right?
course.
Yeah.
So those restrictions are not state restrictions. Those are barriers to entry that we need to speak about and break, because barriers to entry create animosity. So if we see a fuel opportunity and we decide, because of our chemical engineering degrees, maybe we can reopen a refinery and use the Sasol way of extracting oil from coal and refine it and make petrol and contribute to society. The immediate barrier to entry is not even our skin color. It's the amount of money we have to invest before we begin producing the end product. So the question we should be asking is, what are institutions that are there? Do they exist to be able to fund projects to the tune of 400 million, 600 million for the betterment of South Africa? And now, if it is a state project, the state needs to assess, if we plow this money in this idea, what about other ideas that can make immediate employment, like ETDP, EPWP projects, things that are large labor intensive, like the construction of a road or a dam. So those are large unskilled labors, and it's immediately assisting the people. So it's because of these problems that we are unable to plan correctly, because we think about alleviating the immediate. So if you can look, out of all the parties that contested elections, all of them had the same thing: jobs, jobs, jobs. So it's a bone of contention. So, but our response as the council is that we need to be more robust in our approach to economics. One of the few sectors that we don't play in is investment. So we're researching with a few of my learned friends, and we looked at youth development approaches by other countries. So other countries have a youth fund. So when you're born, they have a bond. It's a youth bond. So if you can buy government bonds. They increase 5.5 per annum, but you cannot withdraw them. Some of them are transferable, some of them are non-transferable. So this idea was that every person was
they're
born.
not taxable, are they?
They are. No, they're not. Yeah, some of them are not taxable. Yeah. Then what happens is the government needs to issue a bond in your name. So maybe we nationalize a sector. This is hypothetical, so don't quote me. We nationalize the mining sector because people are already thinking about that. And then all the proceeds of that mine contributes to a bond, but that bond is linked to every child born, maybe from the day we start to expropriate. Then every year we contribute to the bond, right? It increases compound interests or whatever the fund can do, if the fund is going to expand projects and invest. But all this money is accumulated until such time you turn 18. When that happens, every young person now has a start. So you are able to withdraw that money, or you can keep it in if you're fine. But you're able to withdraw that money and start your life. So if it means starting a business, you already have a leg up. If it means you want to buy a property, you already have a large sum which can come in as a deposit or perhaps completely buy a property. So we are saying that that could be the biggest contribution and needle mover in the fight against unemployment and inequality. Because every young person, indiscriminate, if you are born from today onwards, those kids 18 years from today will be able to monetarily get that benefit and start their lives. This will change the trajectory of the economy. And another activity that we need to start to invest ourselves in is buying stocks and buying shares. These are South African companies that are listed. We must also encourage companies to list on the stock exchange so that we can have consumer trust and consumer accountability. I've seen a lot of companies get away with a lot of ill treatment against us. And we are allowing it because we have this mentality that we cannot buy those shares and own some of those shares. There are companies that will treat us. But we know that at board level, you can be able to fix some of these things. So that is a culture that I think if we can start investing ourselves in, so both we can start investing in mirror mines, maybe buy 50 cents a share, 5 rand a share, and it becomes a culture as South Africans to buy stocks in the stock exchange. So when companies grow, we grow with them, and then we're able to use that dividends to fight poverty. You know?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I think it's a necessary mind shift. Of it's not necessarily trading, that's another level, but just the investment ideology to say, okay, we're going to start with mirror mines and then we're going to invest. This will encourage startups to go to the stock exchange and look for money so that people can stop saying, hey, we want money for starting up our business. They can just literally put their stocks on the stock exchange and we invest as society. But this stock exchange is ours. It's the South African Stock Exchange. But South Africans do not play a role in that stock exchange. I mean, I'll give you an example. Some time ago, 3 years ago, there was an incident on Heritage Day. A young man wearing his Ndebele attire, so Ndebele cultural attire, was refused entry in Clicks and Boulder. And the response from the public was that people started marching.
I remember that.
You remember?
Yeah.
Now, let's just say hypothetically, instead of marching, we all own shares of Clicks. And then when they did that, we were able to make them suffer, and sell. It would affect their share price. We know what happens when the share price falls. Boards meet. When boards meet, we're able to point them in the right direction because they're providing a service to us. And through the stock exchange, it's an ability for you to also have a share in their prosperity. Well, not just their prosperity, including their downfall, which is the downside of investing. So if a company collapses, it collapses. But the more shares you own, the more you have a voice because you move. If people are saying the market, but you are not part of the market, you're a consumer in the market, then they take decisions for you. You become a child for big business. So I think perhaps one of the things that we never really looked at was investment. And stock exchange has always been open to teaching people about how to play a role in the stock exchange. And personally, I believe all of us should be buying those shares because the stock exchange has been trying. So I think it's one of the programs that the council is going to invest itself in to try and get young people to invest, So my view on that in life is that if I'm always drinking this water, let me at least have a few shares of solid water because I know when I continue to support it, the growth of the company is also my growth. So all the activities that I do in life, if I know that to get somewhere I need fuel, so I need to have share prices in a fuel company. To get somewhere I need to eat every day, I need to have shares in one of these wholesalers, So those are some of the attitudes that we must do because I don't think it is an activity that is restricted for the rich, but it's also a mechanism to become rich because once you own shares, it's equity. And you know what equity is. Equity is something that you can use for your own benefit. I mean, if you have sufficient amount of shares in different companies, I mean, imagine if you had Capitec shares when they were trading at 30 cents in 2008, 30 rands. Today, one share is around 3,000. So it is 1,000%, 100% or 1,000% increase. So at that time, if you had bought maybe 100, you do have equity that you can take a loan against. So I think we need to start talking the language of these institutions that we think they are barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Because South Africans started to forget that these institutions are also run by people, human beings. So the bank is a human being. So the bank is not a big animal. It's a human being. If you're having problems, you can call the bank and tell the bank, hey guys, I'm struggling here. Can I have intervention? And they can, like any other individual would. So the same attitude needs to also be given to the state. In fact, I would also advise us to buy government bonds as well, because you can't say you are staying in the country, you want service delivery, but you don't invest in that same institution. So you can buy municipal bonds, you can buy government bonds, and that could be an instrument for our own economic emancipation. It's not the only instrument, but it is an instrument that will assist us.
Yeah.
So today we're seeing a rise in technology. We're seeing, what do you call this thing? Artificial intelligence. So if we were to invest ourselves in artificial intelligence, it wouldn't be that scary when you look at the share price and you are part of the shareholding,
It's fine, the cyber can come and
yeah, because now the shareholding, So so those are some of the things. I think we need to speak to South Africans. South Africans need to become shareholders. So, and I think the more they can express themselves economically, is the more we can take bold decisions, like going to the moon, for instance. We do have the South African Space Program, so that's something that we can move ourselves towards, because when you look at the founding values of our country, Batopele, people first, if we can translate that through the stock exchange, we can then start to build an economic community that can build together, so that we stop complaining. Then we can start putting our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm not saying that this is the Bible, but it is just my solution.
It's an approach,
it's an approach. Look, there's many other things. I mean, I was reading an article. It was an academic article in relation to the budget speech. And so they thought one of the good ways we can generate the shortfall of 1.4 trillion that the state is looking for to maintain their affairs is to go to the Reserve Bank and cap their capital expenditure from 40% down to 20%. So they theorized that it would open around 840 billion. And then on top of that, take company tax, corporate tax, from 25 to 27. Add to that 2%. Combined, we could make 1.2 trillion on its own. That is a good deal. And the fact that it's not being discussed as an option is something else, So
I think, I think you guys are already doing a lot to help.
Yeah.
So if I had to ask you personally, if you had to take an approach, like a sector to follow or to go dive in terms of helping the society in general, where would you go? Would you choose politics, business, religion? Where do you feel you would be closer to bringing that utopia?
Personally, I'd stay in politics.
Politics?
Yeah, because, look, these are both sides of the same coin. And then in the middle there is religion. Because most of our ideologies are underpinned by a religion.
Well, there's a lot of politics in religion.
Yeah, but
even God is doing a lot of politics with the devil right now.
Okay, that's a rabbit hole that I don't want to get into.
No, we get there later on, but I want to see.
You see, religion is also losing its grip on influence. So religion in 2025 is not what it used to be in 1966, 1968. So people are no longer scared of being banished by their own religious communities. So it is no longer a deterrent for behavior. So I remember there was a time when we used to, in debate school, and this guy used to say, as a good Christian, you can't debate like this. And then we started to realize that some of these values that we have, we cannot always reason within the confines of the religion, because some problems are beyond it, And if you want to,
Which kind, for instance?
For instance, there was a pro-slavery argument anchored in religion. So when we fought against it, you were told that it's unchristian to do so, and there's a fact. It's anchored in religion, and people used the Bible and twisted some of the words there, or misinterpreted them, or interpreted them in a way that suited their narrow agendas to oppress people. And South Africa is not innocent of that. I mean, we had fundamental pedagogics, which was a fundamental base course when you studied education. And that course was underpinned in the Christian religion, targeting your mind so that you can focus in this particular direction in life. But then the same Bible would justify segregation, would justify unjust laws, So we must be careful on how we invest in religion. And now that I'm saying religion is loosening its grip on society, because now we have to contend with many other things that are more pressing. So we do have large religious communities, and it's ironic. We're moving into the Easter weekend, fresh from Ramadan. So now you start to understand that while religion still has a hold, it does not sway people from left to right. Another indication is we have an African Christian Democratic Party. If religion was that strong, there would be a president from that strata. But as Christians and as Muslims and as Jews and all these disciplines and religious disciplines, we have learned a way to not use them against your fellow man, but use religion as it was intended for your own personal salvation. So the problem is when religion starts to say you must look at person A and person B as an enemy. So that's why I'm theorizing that religion is slowly losing its grip, because also we no longer have the challenges that irrigate religion to become the solution to some of our problems. So now we have clean water, we have service delivery, so we don't need to go on Sunday and pray for stuff like that. And then we have also realized that religion is the administration. So if you are spiritual, and then through religion, you are able to benefit more. So we have less people who are religious, who are spiritual, and then those that are religious are now administratively thinking about the religion. So no, people are not connecting spiritually to some of the religions. I'll give you an example. I am a person that really, really loves Christianity, right? And when I read about Islam and I read the Quran, I fell in love again because I felt like it was a good doctrine. And when I went into I actually attended some of the mosques, then some of the madrasas, I started to come to a realization that the entire religion is incubated inside the Arab culture. And me not being Arab, I do not want to part with my ethnicity and, I did not want to have a new Arabic name. And some of the people that I discussed with, even though it wasn't, they encouraged it so that when you become Muslim, you must become this kind of a person. But I have customs that are traditionally linked to who I am. And I did not want to part with them. But now, you see, it created a crossroad between what I want and the religion itself. And I thought, you know what, let me stick to my religion and be more spiritual. Because I do believe in the doctrine and I do understand what they want to achieve, you see. So, and I was like, I'd rather be spiritual than be religious, because being religious was starting to put on the line my customary beliefs, So I was like, no. I'd rather
Yeah.
be, and this is a view that is shared by a number of young
a lot
people.
of people.
Specifically, we have
Yeah.
less and less young people who are going there. I mean, also look at the healthcare. Our healthcare has moved. We are delivering more healthcare. People are getting healed from diseases. So the church is no longer your go-to place when you're not feeling well.
Yeah.
So because of they lose that influence,
Yeah.
it's starting to wane in society. And I cannot undermine their influence, of course. Religions are big. I mean, you'll see this week. Stadiums will be full, churches will be packed, because all of us are there. But now it's no longer a needle-moving institution that will stand and say, X must happen, and then X does happen. So people are more logical. You see, I don't know to attribute that to what, but it is happening. And I'm seeing it sweep across the world slowly and surely. So, yeah. So
you said the politics, religion, and all of that. It's kind of like the same coin, really, just flip sides.
yeah.
What's the common denominator between politics, religion?
Money.
Money, but money is it's an outcome of the human mind, isn't it?
Yeah, but you see, money is. My brother once said, money is an instrument to measure a person's success. So, let's look at human development from our hunter-gatherer origins. Logically, if we're hunting as a community, the bigger the community, our prospects of hunting are higher. So in the community, if I'm stronger, if I'm bigger, I will obviously hunt more, And then there are the farmers. So the ones that are able to plow and then sow and then store whatever that they've sowed. On bad months, they're able to succeed. So people started to realize that because we do different things, the farmer and the hunter needs to have a correlation. And then some genius came in and said, no, let's have a currency, because you cannot calculate the work of the farmer and the work of the hunter. Yeah, because the farmer might say, I work harder because I wait a whole entire year for harvest. And then you also have to wait for that small little animal to become a big one. So, but now we can trade because I need some meat, you need some grain. So once people started to agree on a currency, then the power dynamics started to shift. And the currency itself, money, you find it inside the Bible. That's how old it is. So I think money is a critical factor for both religion and politics. So somebody said money is the gun and politics is the trigger, Whereas when to shoot. But the reality is that money is very important in society.
No, for sure it is.
Perhaps maybe now with a trade meltdown, we're about to see a market crash, according to my analysis. So if we do have a market crash, maybe the meaning of money might change, because then we'll start to either face hyperinflation and majority of crisis.
We'll have one.
A market crash.
Yeah,
but
with all the consequences. But at least every time there's a crisis like that, it gives opportunity for normal people like us to
move.
kind of move a little bit.
Now you see, now you're talking about power.
Power. The whole thing is in power, money. Religion is power, money. The whole thing, politics. So my question is this, right? All of that is an outcome of the human mind interacting with each other, right? Religion, science, anything really. So what do you understand of the mind? That's actually, the name of the thing actually is called mirror mind.
Yeah.
So I want us to mirror our mind here and kind of look at each other's mind. What do you understand of
the human mind?
The human mind.
I think the human mind is extremely, extremely powerful. I think it's extremely powerful. So one of my new habits that I've been doing is there's a rabbit hole. A rabbit hole is when you have insomnia, you're just getting into video after video after video, researching a little bit. So there is a theory that we're living in a simulation. So, and the theory of the simulation scientists cannot say that we are not living in a simulation. So when you think about it this way, I've played first-person view games. I'm sure you did, and we've seen the evolution of graphics.
Yeah.
Now we have NPCs, non-playable characters, and how they move inside the game. And I'm sure, I don't want to mention specific games, but you've seen how now they're more realistic. I mean, we've seen...
With the VR, it gets even crazier.
So now, yes, you're correct.
You get immersed in it the entire...
Yeah, so now, who created the program, right? And they have created a world where the people in the game created a game.
The game, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I was playing, I can mention GTA.
Yeah.
And on GTA there was a game where my avatar was playing a game. So in the game, there were people in that game, you understand?
Yeah.
So all I'm trying to say is that there is a possibility. It's in the billions, it's in the millions actually. But there is a high possibility that we are in a simulation. Yeah. We are a product of the imagination or the mind of another entity. And then that person created us. So could we be in that person's simulation too? And
Let's explore
no,
that one.
Now the question becomes harder.
Yeah.
Now, are we the simulation that is created, or are we the civilization that created the simulation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the chicken and egg sort of question.
Yeah.
But you see, I think we should explore that. Because, by the way, mirror mind, you see, if you take two mirrors...
Sure, they reflect forever.
They reflect forever. That sort of displays what you're talking about. So, first...
I like you talk about images.
Images.
So, the image in the mirror, it's a replica. Which one is the original? Which one is the fake? Because that's what a simulation is.
That's exactly what it is.
So, which one is the real one?
Yeah.
So, that's the question.
And the imagination actually is, the whole process of images. I really want to go, because I feel the reason why we have conflicts in this world and why we somehow are doing the same thing over and over is perhaps we might not be able to see that we're in some sort of simulation. We are sort of programmed one way or another.
True.
So now,
and then we call it destiny.
We call destiny or fate.
Oh yes, that might be true. You might be fated to do that. Programmed.
Programmed. Okay, can we look at our own programming right now?
Okay. I'm trying to understand you when you say we're looking at our programming. Are you talking about?
Do you realize that you're programmed? Everything about you is programmed.
Yes, I think I'm programmed. My habits, the way I sit here, these are things that I taught myself how to do.
You taught yourself?
Yeah, subconsciously and consciously. So I've got habits that I don't know where they come from. I've got habits that I do know where it comes from,
Like what?
Like probably my manner in speaking.
Okay, let's start with speaking.
Yeah, because
speaking is a program. Language is a program, isn't it?
Language, it's an IT program. Yes,
it's a program. Even
and libraries get updated. Yeah.
Okay, so I want us to look at the conditioning first, the programming of human
mind.
Yeah, the human mind, and then perhaps we can see if there's anything free of program. If the program can be aware of itself, kind of like what you were saying. The player, NPC.
Being aware of you.
NPC.
I don't know what they call it in the movie industry. Like when you watch movies like Deadpool, and then there's a part where he looks at the camera like that and it's like, hey, you, I'm talking to you, man, So, look, self-realization. What we're actually discussing was actually portrayed in a movie called The Matrix. If you remember The Matrix and Neo. So Neo got convinced and, they told him that you're living in a simulation. And then he was like, nah, bro, he lied. So they gave him a blue pill and a red pill. And then he took the red one, I think. And then they showed him their current reality. And unfortunately, they couldn't unplug him. They couldn't plug him back in. So to the Matrix and to understand that you're in the simulation. So I do think that there are people that can rewrite their own code in the context of coding. But you must also remember, if you're a coder, you do something called updating libraries. So if I find a loophole in the system, a backdoor to your program, programmers usually check on these things. And then the moment an avatar moves out of the game, then the system is connected, a patch is made, updates are done. Then somebody says there's a glitch in the matrix, So if you're looking at it from that perspective, you must also understand that the mind is also prepared for this. For example, we have a nose, it's a feature in our faces, but you can't see them because it doesn't really give you, imagine if when we look at the world, there's a big ass nose there.
Yeah.
So your brain has decided to optically remove the
To be
the
oblivious
nose.
to it.
Yeah. So if we're looking at that as a concept, it might be possible that the actual coding and the writing is there, but for efficiency, the mind has just removed the ability to see the coding. So in this instance, it would have been that those lines in the matrix, they're probably there, but you can't see them because it is for efficiency or for whatever level it is there. So have you ever seen the monkey theory about two monkeys on two separate islands? So a group of monkeys on one island, the other one is on another island. And then when they taught this one how to use currency, or, then when they went to the other island, they found them doing the same thing. Then they were shocked because when they started the experiment, both of them did not know. So when they went to go teach the other ones, they found the other ones already doing it. And these ones had done it. So maybe we might be a hive
Some sort of hidden connection of
yeah,
consciousness.
with all of us. So that's string theory, that everything is connected. So look, possibilities are there.
No, I don't want to look at possibilities. I want to look at facts as we're sitting here.
Factually speaking.
Yeah, let's bring out your program.
My program.
Yeah.
I think you're trying to guide me somewhere, and I'm trying to avoid it. But
well, because it's part of the program.
It's not part of the program. What you okay, it's fine. Let's not be technical. You're trying to say that what is my programming?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm being programmed, but what are my experiences? I've got a wealth of experience. I'm in my 30s. I've been an activist since I was 14. What guides me, my programming is I'm guided by my heart. So I just refuse to see injustice in the world. So if you're a human being bleeding and I'm there, you hurt me too. So that's my fundamental programming. I'm a person that is, I've got empathy embedded in my coding. So people that are weak, people that are powerless, those are my people. That's me. I resonate with them. I resonate with people who are engaged in struggle to improve their lives because that is me. So I do not resonate with the powerful. I do not resonate with the people in power because I believe we're not in charge. But the bulk of us are the ones who are struggling every day. The hard workers who wake up at 4 a.m., come back at 12 p.m., 11 p.m. so that they can sleep and just sleep for 4 hours and work for a minimum wage. Those are my people. So that's everything, like anyone who's just enduring the struggle. Doctrines like socialist and communist doctrines, they call them working class. Those are my people. So my DNA is riddled with them because that's who I identify with. I don't identify with the all-powerful, and all these power struggles, aristocrats. No, that's not me. I'm part of the proletariat, the peasant class.
I'm glad you are. By the way, I have to thank you for all the help you've given us for the Banyamulenge struggle and all of that.
True.
So you see,
in fact, we're doing it again this year.
Yeah. Hopefully, it will be even more successful. So for me, I still call that part of the program, even your empathy. There's some subtle level of programming which is beneficial to society.
Yeah.
But I feel there's no solution within the program. It's good. Let's do our best. Let's structure society in a way that it's enjoyable, more livable. But there's no solution in the program. But to see that, you first have to look at the programming. All right, you say you identify with the struggle and all of that. Identification. Isn't identification the source of the programming itself?
Yeah.
Because as a child, when you're born, you learn to identify, you start the identification process.
True. Yeah.
That's why you find some
familiarization.
Guys. That's why you find some guys actually identify with the powerful, because that's the early programming.
Elite programming.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, look, I hear what you say on the program, and I don't have a distinct conclusion on what the actual programming is. As I told you, it could be something right in front of us, like our nose, and then we can't see it. But there are people that go against what you would call programming, and we can start as far back as Jesus Christ himself. When you read about the kind of life that he has lived, and he died on the cross, came back 3 days later, you can see that he had the source code, because he was able to transcend, and his teachings are still true throughout, and throughout many religions, even those that don't believe in Jesus, they can still identify with those things. I mean, love thy neighbor. That's a powerful struggle. Like, treat people how you want to be treated yourself. So that is needle movers, people who change society. And I think they exist in their drones, like thousands of them. Many die early before their times. I mean,
once you have that mind, the system has to take you out of it.
Yeah, so
you are disturbance.
Yeah, but we also have people that lived an extremely long time, but they've been very good to good positive lives. I've seen, in Catholic in the Catholic Church, they have something called sainthood, right?
I don't know that. What is that?
So sainthood is if you've lived a life so righteous and so that they have a firm belief that this person definitely is in heaven because of how you lived. So you are like a role model of sorts. So, Saint Stephen's, Saint Joseph, so we all have these saints, and how they live their lives is exemplary. So we walk in their shoes so that we can try to emulate them. And some of their sacrifices, most of them are saints, are people that have sacrificed a lot, So, but look at people that live long. I mean, Nelson Mandela, what an exciting life, what an exciting mind. But he's lived quite a long time. 93 is not a child's play,
Yeah.
But I think he's lived that life full of struggle, but yet look at that heart, the forgiving heart. And the atrocities of our past are hard to overlook. And he'd never said we must overlook them. In fact, his instructions was we must never forget what has happened. And I think we shouldn't. We would be foolish to do so.
You can repeat the same mistake if you forget.
Yeah, and then his insistence on dialogue, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I think for me is one of the greatest things that have ever happened.
See, I believe in dialogue.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm trying. I'm trying to bring another sort of dialogue.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me put it differently, Ben. What are you?
Me? I'm just my mom's kid, man. I'm just my mom's kid. Me and my,
Yeah, but
my brother.
What makes you? Okay, so you say
what
your
makes
mom's,
me me?
Yeah, no, you say your mom's kid, right? Let me show what that involves. So, there's a remembrance of your mom.
Sure, my dad.
There's a remembrance of the past.
My past or her past.
Yeah, when you say mom, that's a recollection that you have a mom, isn't it?
True.
So that's part of your programming, memories.
All right.
Besides memory, what are you?
Besides memory? That's an important question.
And you're very knowledgeable, by the way. You're so versatile in so many different
but I
things. That's what I would call knowledge. But knowledge is memory as well, right?
Of course. A lot of what knowledge is memory.
A lot or
especially history of where we come from. So, look, history is bound to repeat itself. It's a phenomenon. Many scholars and philosophies have always understood it. But I want you to unpack when you speak about memory. I just want you to bear in mind, for you to exist, your mom and dad had to come together. Then for them to exist, it's their mom and dad. So that's already 8 people. And for your grandparents to exist, there was like another 12 people. So, and then there's countless other lives, right, that have survived for you to be here. And I'm sorry to just quote the Bible, but when Cain killed Abel, one of the first things God said was, "Can you hear his nations crying?" Yeah, so he said his blood is crying.
Yeah.
And I understood it from the context of the first people, the ones that died in the early ancient times. Their bloodlines are lost to society forever. So, and the ones that lived are the ones that today are living. So it means that you might have been here all along in some way or another.
Yeah, one way or another. Yeah.
And all these people leave a genetic marker in your DNA, all of them. So when you speak about who you are and you want to talk about your history, then all these people, all these DNAs, and thousands of people coming together to engineer the fact that it's true that you're here today. And you're probably going to die one day. And your kids, if you will have kids, if you won't end your bloodline, but if you have kids, and you probably have siblings, they will have kids, and all of them will have a DNA marker. That DNA marker will be you. So we have thousands of years in our DNA.
We have some sort of collective memory.
Now, do we have to rely on science to extract that memory?
Do we need to rely on?
Science to extract the memory. Because we have the makeup. It can show you this is the bloodline of King so-and-so, the bloodline of whoever, and you're part of that bloodline. Now, being part of that bloodline, are you able to extract experiences, emotions, feelings, ideas from that bloodline, through science or spirituality?
I think both, but I think more naturally it would be, just as living. I mean, what emotions?
Then it means that we unintentionally agree to the concept of reincarnation.
Yeah.
That's why I said we might be 8 billion, but we are the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
People.
It's the same. The same cycle kind of.
Yeah, but then environment is everything.
The environment. See, when you said your bloodline, I want us to go a little bit to look on a more general way.
Yeah.
So when I say memory, which is knowledge,
of course.
So the DNA is knowledge, accumulated information, right? That is just there's a learning process, but every time you learn, you accumulate.
Yeah.
So it can be through the DNA. It can be your memory of when you were in high school.
And then you forget. You also forget.
Yeah, you forget. But the basic process of the mind is to accumulate knowledge.
True.
So that's what I'm calling the program, the conditioning.
Yeah, experiences and
understandings. And all of that. Yeah. Now, besides that, what else do you have? Besides memory, what else are you?
I'm just a passerby, man.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like, I'm just a soul that's traveling through
this time.
Okay,
let's say the soul. What do you mean by that?
By soul, I believe in a soul by virtue of my religious orientation. So I do believe that I have a soul, and the soul resides inside.
Because you've been told.
Yeah, it kind of makes a lot of sense when you have a soul.
It's comforting.
So you see, human beings are very special in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
We are one of the few animals that experiment on themselves. So we have self-awareness. And then we also have an imagination, a very, very wide imagination,
Can we, before you go in, self-awareness, right? So we're still talking about the self right here, which is you.
You, yes.
And you see that what constitutes you mostly, unless we see something else, it's memory, knowledge.
And condition.
Yeah, which is knowledge. I mean, you are conditioned by the past, which is knowledge.
Sure.
Yeah. So besides the conditioning, What else are you?
Pers-
What makes you different from any?
Animal. Is that so?
Why? See, that's the so. Is it not part of the conditioning still? The fact that you believe there's
If
a
what you're saying is
mental-
correct, then science experiments would actually disprove what you're saying.
How so?
So we all know the story of Jungle Book, right?
What is that? I don't know.
Jungle Book is a kid who grew up in the jungle.
I know that.
So if you're talking about prior knowledge and its ability to manifest itself in you and in the current form, then that kid should have been he wouldn't have thought that he's an animal all these years.
Yeah, but that's a very superficial knowledge.
Superficial how? Because he was living with the animals and he thought he was a
Alright,
monkey.
so to walk or to crawl,
Yeah.
he saw something, right? He saw the animal crawling, and he imitated that.
No. Look, a horse is born. 10 minutes later, the horse is already walking.
Yeah, because of the DNA information.
So the DNA will always guide you at its most primal level. But the largest contributor is the environment. That is where customs come from, and that is where heritage comes from. Because what makes you you and where you grew up or whatever is not just your genetic makeup, but the nurture of environment. It develops you into who you are. So if I am an optimist, for example, this is my thinking. I'm always with a positive outlook, looking out. But if I'm raised in a home of pessimists, for a large part of my thinking, it will shape me to be a pessimist. If I'm exclusively in that environment.
Because you are copying that environment.
Yes, because we live through that. I don't want to say monkey see, monkey do, but that is essentially what we do.
Yeah.
However, we then have something different. We have an imagination.
Okay,
And
imagination. What is imagination?
Imagination is like a dream, is essentially.
Yeah, well, it's
So
a dream,
it's
yeah.
either it happens when you're sleeping or when you're awake.
Or when you're awake, yeah.
So when your imagination starts to kick in, it starts to develop, to show you what could have been outside of what is there. Or it is you imprinting on your imagination to say, it's like if you're doing problem solving and you're thinking about an out-of-the-box solution. Because I can give you the rules right now. You can internalize and interpret the rules. But for the solution, your imagination can play a great role in ensuring that you move. So that is an unaccounted for because we cannot pinpoint the imagination. Yes, we can see the brain, which part of the brain is more active when you're imagining, or when you're in dreaming, or when you're in REM sleep. However, we haven't reached that level. That's why a computer genius friend of mine was telling me, I'm not afraid of AI for now until it can map the mind. Because for now, it's still a brainchild of the mind. It's not the mind itself. So we need to be afraid of AI the day AI is a mind of its own. But it cannot be a mind of its own for now.
Can you imagine something outside of your knowledge?
Yes, you can
Like
dream about places you've never been to. You can
let's
think
take that.
something that you've never thought before.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not like Google. What you think, you think when you think or when your imagination starts working. The moment you type a podcast, then it shows you different options. No. You can.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you can be unique in your thinking.
I'm doubting that. Let's explore that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm doubting because I think that's why I'm giving so much emphasis to the programming because I feel the program is the same thing. All right, so you imagine
Let me
something.
stop you there.
Yeah.
Let me stop you there. Much of human history is maybe centered upon the movement of our people. So people have been moving since time immemorial. So the factors that could have made them move are different. Yeah? But when they moved from an environment that they know to an environment that they do not know, and that is cornerstone to their ability. So some of them, in the later years, started to become shamans and prophets to say, let us go to a place that you have never imagined. Even at a societal level, you can dream about a place that is not there, like where black men can vote in South Africa. That was a dream.
Yeah.
And we are here now. So are you saying that the people that conceptualized this, they dreamt about this because it existed before?
I'm saying it's still the program.
Okay, Mr. Program. I hear you. I hear you. I don't want you to restrict your mind with
No, it's not. It's
program.
not. I'm not saying all life is programming. I'm saying there's something that is perhaps
the force behind it.
There's a force.
Yeah.
Perhaps that is beyond programming, but you can never get to it before you get to it.
The synonym for what you're talking about is God.
No. See, that's part of the program still. I think this is the same mistake, approaching it that way. So let me ask you a question. You say you can imagine, you can think or imagine a place where you've never been.
Yeah.
Let's go through that process and in its subtle way. So you imagine seeing a place that you've never been, right? Maybe imagine seeing a color that you've never seen, isn't it?
Imagine seeing a color you've never seen.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe let's play with that.
Yeah. So.
Or let's imagine something that's there, like a supernova.
Yeah.
And maybe you're there in a neutron star before it becomes a supernova.
Yeah.
And then you're maybe like 2 or 3 planets away.
Yeah.
Let's imagine that.
Okay, good. Look at that, right? So there's a certain...
The North Star.
Yeah. So there's a certain looking happening.
Yeah.
You're standing there looking at it.
Sure.
So isn't that because there's been looking before, that you can imagine looking?
True. Imagine looking. You're very cryptic with your...
No. It's not cryptic. It's maybe such... I think, you see the force you're talking about?
Yeah.
Is what...
Force behind creation.
The force behind creation is what's making sure you don't do the exercise. Because that force is a bit... I don't know how to put it. It's hiding. So can you imagine looking without ever looking?
Yeah.
How?
The same way a person born blind can give you a description about a dream and explain many other concepts.
Yeah, no, person
except
blind.
for color.
Yeah, but no, because they've never seen color.
Yeah, but they've never seen it all.
Yeah, but they have an imagination process as well in their mind. Because other senses are working. Should you take away all your senses, what are you thinking about?
Well, to think, that's also, I think, another sense that we must add to the 6 senses. But to think is very important. And this is...
your whole life is based on thinking. There's no life without thinking.
Yeah, but you must remember that the world works in a connected way. So how your brain operates is not... it's not mathematically accurate. So we can't say 1 + 1 is equals to 2. So if we put both in this environment, with these resources, this is the outcome that's going to come. Because then life is different. The minds are also different, and how synapses are formed inside your brain are also different. Your makeup, and there's also traumas that serve your ability to think in a particular way.
Yeah, discriminate some.
And those are traumas that are very subtle to you, even the one that is a victim of those traumas. So the mind is not a definitive, like a constant. It can't, because if we go under an MRI scan, you might find that I'm happy all the time because I've got a little bit of a brain damage. Or you might find that I'm pissed off all the time because I've got a trauma that actually happens. Because you see, the brain, the reason why they can do brain surgery and they don't have to sedate you is because the brain does not have a receptor for pain.
Yeah. Can't feel anything.
So it can't feel it. They can literally put your hand in your brain and then squish, That's a little scary, but that is how nature has allowed us to nurture ourselves to get to this level. Then you must also remember natural
Ben,
selection.
what you're doing here, Ben, what you're doing is you're juggling your conditioning, you're juggling your knowledge. Let's leave that.
But I've given, the greatest explanation for God is Saint Augustus was explaining, he wanted to write a theory on God, a thesis
Yeah.
on God. And then one day, he met a child at a beach, and then the child was running from the beach, putting water, trying to put it in a small little hole that she had gone.
Mm.
So she kept doing this exercise throughout the morning, and then he approached her, and he said, "What are you doing, man? You keep running around. What are you doing?" The girl said, "No, I want to take all the water in the sea and put it in this small little hole."
Yeah.
And St. Augustus was like, "That's crazy, man. Even you can already see some of the water is already going back to the sea." That girl responded, "I am like you. I want to take all of God's knowledge and put it in the small little head of yours." And then, because St. Augustus was writing this theory during the time of Isaac Newton and his latest discovery of calculus, he then concluded that God begins where man's intelligence ends. And man's intelligence is infinite. But at the end of infinity, God begins, you know? So when your limits reach infinity, then God begins right there.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so now,
see,
now,
the limit
now with that concept.
see, the limit
Yeah.
is the program.
The limit, yes, but so after the limits, God begins. I mean, I'm not going to talk about Oppenheimer, but Einstein.
No, look, Ben. The limit is the program. The program is the knowledge, the accumulated knowledge.
Yeah.
Let's stop with the knowledge for a second. Let's look at the process itself.
To accumulate the knowledge.
Yeah, the process of accumulation, how it comes across. So, imagination is only possible through juggling of knowledge. So I see a bird flying, then I can think of an airplane, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, it's not as easy as that, but
well,
yeah,
I'm making it very simple, but
Sure.
that's not, So, why do you feel compelled to keep on juggling the knowledge?
Because I'm able to think using the knowledge that I've acquired.
Why do you feel compelled to constantly think?
Because if you stop thinking, you die, man.
So that is you. So that's what I mean by what are you?
Oh, so
Yeah. Without
I
you
am
have
because
proof
I
of-
think.
Yeah, you are because you think.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I want us to die a little bit as we're doing this. So, thinking is the operation of the past, isn't it? So with thinking, we have an idea of time.
True.
Yeah. Which is space as well. We can argue, right? I mean, you have a mental, you think, well, after here, we'll go back home and all that. Now, I'm saying, is there a way for men to bring that process up and then eventually stop it?
I think it has been done before.
No, let's not. Well, can you do it now?
You know? Yeah, I think it has been done before.
By who?
By our predecessors. Prior the Industrial Revolution, just in the 1800s. If you look at Renaissance jewelry and prior Renaissance jewelry, intricate jewelry, the watchmaking of before the mass production, you can realize how, and some of these Masonic buildings and how they've been built, they're still standing. And this is recent history. And then you look at how the technology used, the brain, the critical thinking of, if you read books that were written in the 40s, you realize there was a level of heightened alertness and awareness. And then at the height of the Industrial Revolution, critical thinking started to die down, you know. Yeah, but and those people in the early 1900s and late 1800s, they declared that they live in a golden age. Technology will not be as good as it was, even though they were shooting all over London and all of that. But you do get a community that surpasses and reaches a level of consciousness that is just amazing. Today we have pyramids. We're still cracking our heads to find how they were built. And people are thinking giants, whatever. They're finding new technology that is, the evidence of that kind of thinking. So I do believe that you can reach that higher level of consciousness, and you can also turn it down.
Yeah.
Because when society does things, and even genetics, if something is necessary, then genetics will be pushed to do that. So somebody was theorizing our heads might get a little bigger because of all the information that we've been getting. So genetics will respond with a slightly bigger head, or even how we look genetically. So prior, people used to be tough, big. Now we all have pot bellies because we're always sitting behind laptops and machines and all. So those are some of the consequences of that kind of living. So it's not that we are lazy to think beyond what you say is programming. We do operate in that realm. And that is a realm that some of us in the world have decided to give that operation to God. Because even Einstein said, it would take a long time for me to debate that there is no God. So we can just live by the debate that there is a God,
Yeah.
And I think if we can just say that that is a God level operation, then that is it. This week I was thinking about this word serendipity, events that lead to good fortunes. And most of our serendipity, people don't see it. You don't see your own serendipity. And if you say it's programming that can align you to great fortunes and all of that, the actual steps that came together to ensure that you have this windfall of great opportunity, people don't appreciate that process because we don't even look into the steps and events that send you to misfortune, or stagnation. So if we had focused on the process, as you're saying, we could get to another level of understanding. But now, to think beyond your mental capacity and think like a god is something that I think psychologists, they term it a god complex. Or maybe we might be legitimately crazy because of the intricacies that are involved in life in general.
I think it's rather dangerous to do this, but I
Also
feel it's
because,
necessary.
Yeah, but also remember, when you give yourself that position, there are certain qualities you need to have, the ability to give life, and not artificial life, but true life. And we haven't reached some of those levels, you see. So that's why I said to you, I'm just a soul who's passing through. Because if I decide to look into the actual nitty-gritties of the genetic makeup of life, the universe and all that is there, you start to realize that the odds of just us existing in the habitable zone of our solar system are just unthought of, And I do not want to consume my time here on Earth worrying about our serendipity that I was telling you about. Because those events that led to it's windfall, the fact that we are alive, we are a dominant species, we could have been extinct in the past 100 years alone, maybe 17 times. And then, we could have been extinct by so many factors. And this time of the year, we're passing through an asteroid belt. There could be one lucky one that just hits us and makes us extinct. And out of all that time, I do not want to say that I've dedicated a fraction of my time to worrying about what God would do,
Yeah. No, I get you. But I think it's a subtle escape. You're trying to escape something that is inevitable, first of all. By the way, I'm not saying you personally, I mean as a human being. And I feel that's perhaps the source of all human issues.
Issues? No.
Because if you think about it, politics, religion, and all of that is the outcome of the human process, right? Organization, thinking. I mean, can you think of a country, is there a country besides thought?
Yeah, look.
The idea of a country is thinking, isn't it?
I didn't think we'd get this philosophical, but I want us to move back into the real
and by the way,
world.
sorry. No, I get
No, I want to answer that.
No, you will, but, let's not classify things as philosophical.
Oh,
what's
okay,
not,
no,
yeah.
that's fine.
It's just discussion.
Discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, look. When you are a animal, and I say animal because we are mammals, right? But we are so high up on the food chain that because inherently mammals have a pecking order of the ones that will defeat these ones. But we've been at the top for so long and so high up.
The apex predator.
Yeah, we are the apex predator. We're the most dangerous things in this world right now. In fact, I've heard that if a human being bites you and you don't get it treated, you're most likely to die.
Because of the germs or something.
Yeah, because of all, you understand. In the mouth, they just exist in the mouth.
Yeah.
So, at a primal level, we're also dangerous to animals. So if I can bite an animal, I can kill it with just the germs that are in my mouth. So, we've been at the top of the pecking order so much that we have even artificially designed our own oppression. Yeah, and instigated our own wars.
Yeah, we need our own conflict.
Yeah, because the human brain, when you talk about the program, is also programmed to be led. Yeah, and I don't want to get deep into that, but we are programmed to be led and to worship. So when we woke up and realized that we had a new boss, we started to create other ops for ourselves. And then that's why we want to segregate ourselves with useless things like color, phenotype, and race and all of that thing. Because we now realize that we are on top, but now we want to get on top of the on top. So the actual...
So we project something that we can perhaps reach one day.
And now we don't even project it. Now we want to dominate each other. So much of our ills and much of our problems come from our desire to dominate ourselves on this already high pecking order. I mean, we are not hunted down by snakes. We're not, So, and look at human life. It's long, 70 years. Very few animals live that long. So we have longevity of life. We have creativity. We have technology and all of these fun things that assert our dominance even further. We can even poison the environment and poison the water. That's how bad we are.
Is that all in the search of meaning?
No, not in it's in the search of dominance.
Yeah, but dominance gives you meaning. It gives you a point to reach.
Yeah, but when the point is as narrow as dominating your fellow man, that's where the challenge comes. Because even in your ideas, when you read about World War One, World War One, and the death of the Archduke Ferdinand, and then you realize that when Germany came and changed warfare for World War One, it scared all the neighbors who always thought Germany was going to fight the way they did. I mean, these guys came with assault rifles. They had a rifle that could fire 2 million weapons. Just
2 million bullets.
You understand? 2 million bullets. They've had Stalin organs that were produced by neighbors. So, and prior to that, there was 100 years of war, all in pursuit of dominating a fellow man. And when feudalism died, we had this aristocratic system. When that died, the Industrial Revolution ended this system. And this system is a means and a way for you to dominate your fellow man. That's why we have the richest man in the world, the most this, most that, because we're always out to show who's dominant. We even have tournaments for stuff like that. We have things called the Olympics to see who can run the fastest, who can throw the longest, because we want to assert ourselves as, that is the goal now, to be better than your fellow man. And that is not an ideology that is consistent with development. It does contribute to development. Yeah. Because through that you'll have all these ideas. I mean,
no, I'm not advocating against that. I encourage that.
You're correct. I mean, look at World War II. That German army changed warfare again. They have produced so many weapons and tactics, tanks that they didn't even use. And imagine So these people sat down
So
and
much
clapped hands for
energy.
themselves because this person created a weapon to dominate your fellow man. So, but imagine if that energy was put towards good.
Something else.
So now for that to happen, the goodness that you are thinking of, I mean, somebody, we've had this discussion on incentive and socialism working against capitalism.
Yeah.
So for good also, everybody's doing things for profit, but self-interest. But that interest is rooted along the narrow ambition to dominate.
There's dominance, guarantee, security, therefore survival.
Survival in this strata. So think about the food chain. We're at top. So you want to dominate at that level.
Even at that level.
Yeah. So already we're not genetically superior, of course. We do have some animals that will kick our ass, but we're lucky that they don't think and they don't organize. If ants,
once they start thinking, we make sure we kill them.
You see.
Yeah.
That's the exact mentality that is programmed into all of us.
So survival is programmed within us.
Yes, but now it's not just survival of the elements now.
No, we've
you see,
dumbed it down.
And genetics is also a good partner. So if you come from the colder climates of the world, you'll be more hairier. You'll be a little more bulkier in good seasons.
Yeah.
And genetics also like complies with your environmental problems. I mean, people, when they start naming generations, one of the first ones, they call them the silent generation. But if you realize why they were silent, there was World War there. There was the Great Depression. There was so much hunger. That trauma was fed onto the kids. And then the baby boomers are the ones who are presidents in almost every country. Those 80-year-old kids, they were kids who were born in a war-free environment. So they were born 44, 45. And by war, I'm talking about no world war anymore. So they had to face their own oppressions. They had their own ideas. And these are the same people who were hippies in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, today they looking at us like we're the lost generation. And they were popping pills by the dozen.
Yeah.
So the reality is that nurture, environment is everything. So you might speak about the programming, but the environment is the programming.
The environment is
now, the thing that you need to also acknowledge is that even us as human beings can engineer this environment. So in this country where we're making this podcast today, we are the most unequal society in the world. We're less than 6 kilometers away from Sandton, the richest square mile in
Isn't that a display
Africa.
That's a display of lack of intelligence.
Of inequality.
Yeah.
So now, if you're going to accuse us of that,
I'm
look
not.
at the persistence.
Please don't make it personal. I mean, generally, look even continental-wise, isn't that a display of lack of intelligence in the human consciousness itself?
But the extreme levels of inequality in this country are extreme, my brother. And they're so extreme that even in this situation, capital is not even compelled to spend their 3 trillion to try and alleviate through creation of more jobs and all of that. But we live in that environment. And this is a man-made environment, you see. So now, your hereditary becomes a byproduct of this environment. So you're black, you're most probably poor. I don't even have to ask you twice. So, and then if you are rich, you're not rich, because we are dealing with people that have wealth over generations, and they live next to us. So that animosity is probably going to build if you don't fix it. And it's very hard to fix, because some of these things are institutionalized, Even in our own planning as the state, I'm not part of the state, but the state and the way it plans, you can realize that they're still using the same lines. They're dictated to by capital. Now we have malls. Some of them are white elephants filling our townships. But when you go to these townships, they still have one exit, one entrance. But when we are here, if there's an emergency, I've got an X number of exits here. I can exit to the N1, the M1. I can exit to anywhere if I need to leave here. But in our townships, we're still coined and confined to 2 exits. And that thing now is controlled design. and those are designs by the apartheid government. So when you say to me that program, I'm like, no, environment, nurture.
Yeah.
So now the nurture is starting to affect the nature. You see, I mean, when last did you see a butterfly? But I'm just kidding. So the nurture and how we are treating the environment and society, I think it's pretty unfortunate, and that's how we're able to do that.
So this is how I look at it, right? Through nature, through the learning process, we acquire something from nature.
Yeah.
And we build up our own, I guess, our psyche.
Yeah.
Right? Now that psyche has become dominant to the point where now it's affecting nature. It's guiding nature one way or another.
Sure.
Yeah. So now I'm saying the program, learning is not bad, but the accumulation of that process of learning eventually will lead to issues. You need to let it go from time to time.
So you want us to get dumber?
No,
That's
it's not
gonna
dumber.
happen.
No, it's not dumber. In fact, I think accumulating more could be a sign of dumbness as well. If you don't know to let go somewhere, I mean, think about it. The guy who was it Newton, the guy with the apple.
Yeah.
He actually had a feeling of that whatever that was happening on Earth was pretty much the same thing that was happening around. So gravity, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But it took him a couple of years to actually come up with the theory, because what he had acquired before was so strong, he was so conditioned that he couldn't just come up with the theory. Then eventually when he did, even the people that he was telling it to, they never accepted it. It took them some time to deprogram. So I'm saying there's a danger in programming where you can't avoid it. You programmed. It's necessary. Through programming we can have discussion. We can organize ourselves. We can plan while we meet at the podcast at 2 a.m. So the whole mathematical aspects of it is in programming, the whole social. But it has its limits, and it will always be limited. We've tried to break this program through various ways. Through religion, for instance, we've extended the limit. We've pushed somewhere without realizing that actually it's the program still playing, kind of like the NPC. So I'm saying, can a man involve himself in that exercise when possible to deprogram himself, at least to see his own movements of programming?
I hear you. We are conscious of ourselves, but I don't think, and you do reach certain levels of understanding with the more you contend with your knowledge. So when you do dialectics, dialectic materialism or dialectics of anything, you start to dissect whatever theory that you come up with, and you look at the thesis and the antithesis of your theory. Then you come up with its synthesis. But for that, you have to contend with the reality that there will always be contradictions. And it's possible that contradictions will be permanent.
Well, life is a contradiction itself.
Yeah, because we have day and we have night. So like that major contradiction, we also have contradictions within ourselves, within our thinkings. Yeah. And all these contradictions, we need to contend with them and appreciate them as they are. And then appreciate one specific element, that history will always repeat itself in spite of the contradiction. So if I'm poor and my contradiction is my situation, the moment I become rich, I've got a new contradiction to contend with, my richness, you see. So, and then now I need to contend it with avoidance of being poor again. That leads me to making bad decisions. Or it always depends on which contradictions are you weighing against which ones. So, and that is a situation that is unfortunate, because we cannot control what contradiction you're going to contend with, because that is another thing that is also out of our control. So both, my thinking is, you want us to be more critical thinkers. I do want us to be more critical thinkers, because that is a way. You know, when you read a guy called Yeats, he writes in a poem, and I'll just quote a little.
Yeats.
Yeah, W.P. Yeats. So he has a poem. He says, you must drink deep of the fountain of knowledge, because where shallow drinking intoxicates the mind, but deeper drinking rejuvenates it again. So
that's nice.
so that is actually a testament. It's a proven testament. So whenever we deal with knowledge, you cannot just take a little bit. You must take all of it, down to the very last drop. And then, because the deeper you drink, the more you'll be more rejuvenated, with a better understanding of how it went. I mean, look at the Spanish flu. They had the great idea with the masks, but they thought at the time that even with the bubonic plague, that the bad smells were the ones that were giving them the disease. But they were smart enough to know about the mask. And through that technology, through us understanding that technology, we're able to come with N99 and N95 masks, because now we had a better understanding of a pathogen and how a pathogen is airborne and it can transfer between individuals. So the further we're going to study again, like there was a concept of an ether. So ether was something that they even used. They used to calculate the ether. So if the glass is half full, the other half was the ether. And this was a reality for a long time. But because of deeper delve into knowledge and deeper understanding, we started to understand what occupies space. And then from that technology, we were able to move into greater heights. We created the atomic bomb, which was, of course, a tragedy, because of now it became a political tool for the war games that we've been in, you know. But the reality is that through that technology, we also have electricity. We have a Kubek power station right here. It's based on nuclear fusion. And the same principles are applied to the atomic bomb. So it must tell you that the deeper you go into any knowledge, it's the only way to get onto the other side.
Now, how do
of
you
a
go
better
deeper?
understanding.
How do you go deep?
But capacitate yourself and do this. Debate. Debates are very critical.
No, I agree that, but I'm saying, look at it this way. How do you, is attention, isn't accumulating knowledge only through attention, through observation?
Look, we are always learning.
Yeah, but how do you learn?
If we learn, how do we learn? That's a very fun question. So there's something called pedagogics. The simple way of putting it is it's a way to, it's the study of learning how to learn. No, it's a true thing, because I think it's in Europe. You see, when you have, we call it a crèche, but I think in America they call it kindergarten. So those teachers, they're very critical in some European countries. Pedagogy, yes. So a pedagogue is that teacher. That is the very critical stage of learning, because through a good pedagogue, you're able to be receptive to learning.
Can you teach someone about learning?
They do it all the time.
How?
We did it in crèche. They taught us our ABCs.
Yeah, the techniques can be learned, for sure.
Yeah, but that's the pedagogue. It's the nurture.
Yeah.
Because I've got kids myself, and I've seen how the more I prepared their minds to absorb the knowledge, is the more they understood that, these are tools for further understanding of the system. Okay, so mathematics. So you prime the brain through pedagogues. So you're correct. So you know what a pedagogue is.
I know that.
So that's the whole thing. It's a study. It's called pedagogics. So because I'm also a freedom fighter in my own way, I also look at people that have critical pedagogics, because they've found that there's parts of the pedagogy that have contributed to the oppressive culture that has manifested throughout the years. And there are people who are called critical pedagogics. They study a new form of thinking called critical pedagogics, because they are critical of the product of that system. So I'll put it like this. If you went through the education system, the formal and informal, what you've learned, and then the byproduct at the end of the day is apartheid. So I need to create a system that is going to come together at a pedagogue level from growing up. And when it's time to make a system, I create something like Democratic South Africa. So our thinkings are different at a fundamental level on how we receive information. You see, so that's the important part.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm asking is...
So pedagogues are important. If Actually, this art is so mastered. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Are you Christian? I don't know.
We're born Christian.
Yeah, born Christian. So I used to go to Sunday school.
Mm.
The reason I remember most of these Bible stories, and then later on in life when I read these stories, I remember that they were not tailor-made for old people.
Mm.
They were tailor-made for the kids. The apple, the snake.
Mm.
They were tailor-made for us as kids. Because the more you grow up within these stories, you get to understand. So it's a classic case of pedagogics done right.
Mm.
So imagine if you wanted to communicate a concept like mathematics and the entire spectrum of mathematics, including advanced calculus and, quantum mechanics.
Mm.
And then we make parables. And then we put it in a children's book. Mm. That child, the more you understand those stories, you're going to be more receptive to complicated sciences like quantum entanglement and quantum physics.
Mm.
Because I've conditioned you through those parables. So that's why pedagogy is quite important. And hence when the Bella Bill came, I was very excited. So kids from 4 years needs to be in school because that's the prime age where we can prime the mind for reception of information.
Program the mind.
Well, you can call it programming, but it's pedagogy. So we prime it for development. Mm. And then the more they receive the information, they'll be more receptive. Then they can continue. Yeah. So you are correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So okay. So in learning, learning requires attention or observation.
It's Some people learn what they see. Some people like my parents always accuse me. They always used to say to me, "You need to do what I say, not what I do, because even what you do also teaches me." Mm. So there's a lot of elements towards learning. So you say attention because of the formal education setting. But of course, there is some level of attention that's needed. Mm. But it's observation. It has a lot of elements.
No, but I think the most critical is attention. Well, I don't want to.
No,
attention.
Continue.
Attention in the sense that for you to understand what I'm talking about here, you need some sort of attention, right?
Of course.
And then you, according to your knowledge of English, you interpret all of that. So attention seems to be the ground of learning anything.
That's true.
So that is not something that is teachable, attention. There are some techniques to take you away from the knowledge, what you already know. But attention is a given.
Well, I think we need to look at it from a perspective of incentive. Mm. I like series, right? So I do a thing called binge watching. Mm-hmm. So you can see with all the distraction of phones. But if I'm incentivized to watch the show, I will definitely pay attention. Mm. I've sat through lectures 6 hours long, and they're excruciating. But if I'm incentivized, I'll be able to achieve it. Mm. Yeah, so I hear you on attention, but how are you going to give away attention,
You can't.
Yeah, and to teach a kid to pay attention requires something called discipline.
Are they not born with it?
Discipline?
No, not discipline. Attention.
Not necessarily. It's all about necessity. Because
but to grow, it's necessary to have attention. How do you walk? Okay. How do you speak if the child is not seriously attentive to what is happening?
All right. So when I spoke about incentive, so kids are crawling, everybody's walking. I'll pay attention to the movements and how this is working because I'm interested in walking. Mm. So if I was like an infant and I'm looking at people walking, then there's a class for 10 hours to learn how to walk. I'll attend it because I'm incentivized to walk. Mm-hmm. So attention is directly proportional to incentive. So if you are incentivized to hear and listen, when you hear old people talk about stories of the good old days, you obviously chill there because you're incentivized to know and have a better understanding of the future. So you'll pay all the attention that is needed. But if you're not incentivized, you're not going to pay attention. Then the next WhatsApp that comes in.
I think I'd like to disagree to that. I don't know, you could be right, but I want to look at that.
Okay.
Because For me, it feels like, okay, for instance, right now, if I say toe, right, you already have, your mind is taking you that to your toe, right?
Yeah.
There's a feeling of it. So attention is present. I mean, incentive is me saying toe, but your attention has always there. Therefore, you know exactly what should happen. So it seems like attention is innate, but through accumulation, now you decide where to put your attention to, which is where the incentives come from. So it seems like incentives direct attention, but attention needs no effort in it. It's effortless. I think so.
I disagree.
You might not be interested in what I'm saying, but listening is natural.
Yeah, no, it's not. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
If you're not thinking, then of course, you see, that's the problem with the program. As long as you are clouded with what you're thinking about, what you've accumulated, then you can ignore what I'm saying. But attention is, it seems like very, very present from moment to moment.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the reason I'm bringing up attention is, can you have that inward attention? Of course, right now we can. It's a discussion. But I feel there's a big advantage in having that inner attention from time to time. Not that, a lot of people confuse it to being dumb, as in being lethargic.
Okay.
But that's the most basic way of learning from a human mind, through attention. That's why you have these guys, I think probably all religions do that, and maybe scientists as well. They're very attentive people. Some call it meditation, some call it, observation, scientific observation. So, funny you're talking about quantum physics. That thing of the theory of observation. Why?
Of relativity.
Yeah. No. The
string theory.
No, not the string theory. Well, anyway, the observer effect. They just call it the observer effect.
Yes.
The observation. So
Schrodinger's cat.
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
So observation. It seems like when there's a kind of looking, there's an interference, right? So it seems like for us, on a personal level, right? Psychologically, we seem to make a clear distinction between the one observing and that which is being observed.
Yeah.
Within ourselves. Is there no mistake in that?
Look,
because I think that's the, if you've got to reach God, as people say, you can never reach God if it isn't through that.
Okay. I think we're getting deep in the rabbit hole.
That's where
okay.
I mean, by the
look,
way, Brennan,
the double
how long we've been there?
We're at hour 53.
Yeah, we're almost there.
We're almost.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Can you pause? I want to smoke, man. But let's just conclude this cycle.
Yeah.
But this one is deep. So I know a little bit about the observation theory, and the behavior of photons and the double slit experiment, right? So Schrodinger's cat does speak about how entangled particles behave when humans observe it. The spin-off of that experiment, we can jump to a million conclusions about how these entangled products, these entangled materials, they speak. So at a quantum level, because quantum physics is a different avenue of science. Because
it goes against pretty much what everything you see.
So it gave Einstein a large amount of headache when he was doing quantum physics, because his mathematics did not mathematically come correct within the realm of quantum physics. But it also gives us a picture into how expansive and how wide the spectrum of mathematical understanding is. So when we spoke about knowledge and you said we need to tone down on our knowledge, I was like, no, we actually need to go deeper. We need to throw ourselves very deep into it, because we need to do more than just look at Schrodinger's cat. We need to go deep into the deliberations and how the conclusions come.
I agree. For me, deep is that attention.
Yeah. So when you say attention, I agree with you. But some people learn differently because of many other factors. So it's not a universal thing. So because that is understood, we then introduce a concept called discipline, all right? So discipline is doing something when you don't want to do it, like basically. So once you get enough people having discipline, then the heightened attention, as you said, comes. But then how do you incentivize people to be disciplined? It's because you need to further incentivize them to say, if you sacrifice now, later on you'll have. So when we look at the double slit experiment, we need the discipline to fully invest ourselves into those theories, and we need to also juggle around philosophical theories as well, because could it mean that the mind itself has the power to determine the outcome of matter?
I think so.
So, because, remember, entangled particles, they communicate with one another. So if we separate entangled particles, the other one is on the other side of the galaxy. They will, when we observe them, they might stop, but then when we don't, they instantly communicate with each other. So whatever you do to this one, that
That's
other
right.
one, instantly.
Which violates the laws of physics. Which is light
Because
is the
instantly.
fastest.
So when I say instantly, I'm not talking about the speed of light.
No, beyond that.
So remember, I'm a pedestrian. I'll never call myself a scientist.
No, I know. You're general knowledge. I get it.
This is just general understanding, with an ambition to acquire more knowledge, and hence I'm interested in us investing ourselves in this theory, because even the conclusions themselves are confusing. So how are we going to measure? Because a science methodology of arriving or changing a theory to a theorem and proving it, it's also measurement of results.
Yeah.
But if we have a particle that behaves a certain way when it's observed and a certain way when it's not observed, it means that the mind has an ability to affect matter. Now, once we come to those conclusions, then we start to wonder if we cannot imagine another planet and bring something that is out of existence into existence. Yeah. So now, if I tell you that, you're going to tell me it's magic,
No, I wouldn't call that magic. I wouldn't call it miracle either.
No, I'm just saying...
No, but that's the general way of understanding people. Like, what they don't understand, they call it magic or miracle.
Yeah, so the double slit theory, look, you just...
No. Let's get away from the physics side of it, because it's still the same thing, but on a personal level. When you observe your thinking, for instance, you are acting as if you are the observer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the observed is the content, which is the thought. Is there no mistake in that? I think there's a mistake in that assumption, that the observer is different from the observed. And that's why you can't...
What are you saying? Entangled particles are looking at the observer instead of the observer looking at the...
No, it's the same thing. There's no division in that.
Yeah, no, you see, now this means that you need to go and get a science degree.
No.
So you can argue academically.
No, you see, in fact, I need not to.
Are you saying that entangled particles are observing the observer?
So I'm saying the observer is that which is being observed. And the mistake in assuming that it's separate is what we see out here. All these divisions.
Yeah, I don't know. That's some deep stuff. I think it's scary a little bit.
No, I know it's scary because it goes, when you're saying getting knowledge at the very source. For me, accumulating the right side of knowledge is not accumulating more knowledge. It's to go at the very source
of knowledge.
Of creation of knowledge.
Okay, I do understand you.
So okay, we don't have time anymore, but I don't know if you'll have the time to come back here.
I definitely will.
But I was hoping you can do that exercise I know you're a very busy man, but if you can do that exercise at least, as not often, but just look at it,
Yeah.
right? And then let's have another discussion.
Oh, no, definitely. I think,
Especially see how that affects your daily life and your sleeping life.
yeah, look, I do research a lot. I talk to a lot of scholars. Sometimes I even I've been helping a friend of mine do a dissertation on some of these scientific
You should have heard me finish mine as well. I gave up on that one.
Yeah, no. So physics is an interesting thing. I love science because science is just like politics. You can't run away from science. And the beauty with science is that nothing is ever rigid. You can always go to. There's a formula. It's not like in debate when you're saying I don't believe what you're saying. In science, you just go and prove.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's not a rigid thing. So and I believe that most things should be looked at through the science perspective, and that will help us a lot because we get to understand that some solutions are not solutions for all of us. They're actually causing more problems. Yeah, and we've seen this with the rollout of different medications that affects people negatively, while the others are affected positively.
Even some revolutions. You think this is the right time, and for my country, you know that.
Yeah.
You have one revolution, you think that is the right one.
Then it becomes,
Yeah.
So those are called contradictions.
Yeah.
But in science, science is about learning. So we know what not to do now, you know. And look, I think there was a time where we documented these things very well. I think our dominance in society, not in society, but in the world generally, in nature, has given us a victor's syndrome. You know, when you are a winner, you start to have your own problems that make you a loser. You know, so I think globally we're not doing well with how we're treating our fellow men.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do much better with how we're treating our fellow human being. We need to treat each other
I think
better.
we need to have more of what you said, you know, that spirit you have of always rooting for the underground.
Yeah.
The ones that are
Underdogs,
suffering, underdogs, sorry. Because I have that as well, and it's very conflicting.
But we can't, we also need to, I think we need to start with a principle of understanding of how we treat each other, like base rules to say, let's just respect each other and then learn to love each other. Once that happens, then we'll stop trying to one-up each other because, you see, we have to fight capitalism, then we have to fight tribalism, then we have to fight, it's so many things, racism.
It sounds like we're still at the most basic level of civilization. When I look at the
of
way
course,
it is,
no, we are
I feel
primitive.
there's so much potential that we can do, you know, of this world.
Yeah, but it takes you a lot of learning to get to a level where you transcend that primitive understanding. I mean, I like to observe kids a lot. So when I'm with my children and all my cousins, and I observe how primitive some of their ideas are, you know, and how they can go from expressing high levels of love and to high levels of hatred in just a few moments. And behavior, it's a meritocracy. You treat me bad, they repay the bad. And then there's always the general crying.
Yeah.
So when you look at that and you look at how some of the smartest people in the world have delivered some of the world's greatest atrocities, and people generally, we haven't invested in our own happiness as a country, as a world, because I think we need a day where the whole world is happy. But there's conflicts. There have been conflicts. I mean, when I was growing up in my continent, I'm a 90s baby, so I've heard about Rwandan genocide, civil wars in Liberia. There's been so many conflicts, the Angolan civil war, the Mozambican civil war. So everyone goes to the bush in my continent, including in your country. I mean, Mobutu's kicked out, and then there was Kabila. So you hear all these conflicts that always result in the devaluing of human life. And I think that level is what irks me, because we need to now start to appreciate human life and appreciate that humans also have a survival spirit and acknowledge that survival spirit. And then, but that survival spirit must not be at the expense of another human.
Yeah.
So the only way that I believe that we will finally come together and love each other and build the brotherhood is the day aliens come. And then they're on the higher pecking order. Né? That's when you'll forget that we are black, we are white, we are rich, we are poor.
Kicks in.
Now, now we got to band together
Yeah.
to make sure that we overcome this new threat. Because whether it comes in peace or not, we will not be comfortable with the idea that we are no longer in the pecking order of nature.
Yeah.
But for now, we could have used this time to appreciate ourselves as nature, appreciate the fact that we are on top, remain on top of the food chain, love each other, love the environment, because we live through the environment. Nurture, take care of those animals, their habitats, and grow in science, grow in worship also. Maybe let's build more Meccas. Let's have other religions prosper right next to each other. Let's just have a big kumbaya. People be religious. And we don't even have the same days. We have different days. Support each other, build each other, stop these wars. Then, but it won't happen until an alien comes and says, take me to your leader. That's the first problem.
Yesterday I was, there's this person, I'm starting, on Twitter now, I'm starting to get involved in these spaces, people talking and stuff.
Yeah.
It's more on the political side. So I got there for fun a little bit. Because for me, all that is not serious. That's the most unserious way of living. But we need it until maybe we get to what you're talking about.
Yeah, utopia.
Yeah. So I was listening to a guy talking about our home conflict. So then I said, and then he came, he was really angry.
Yeah, very rude.
Then he was like, you know what, you guys, you must know that we'll take some machetes and we just chop you up in so many pieces. Some of it we'll eat, some of it we'll give to the birds. But we're coming for it. And it was a group of a lot of people. No one said anything. So, of course, that when you hear that, it stirs up something in you. And the only mechanism is, I guess, defense and say, well, we've got machetes as well. We do this and all that. But that is so... first of all, it's urgent. It means these things are very serious. Second of all, it's so primitive. I'm amazed that people still entertain that kind of approach up to this day.
Yeah.
And those are the people, some of them in power, And I look at this youth, we just scared of not getting a job, maybe. We just scared of, not getting the nice girl or whatever, the kids.
Yeah, we don't have existential
we don't see
challenges.
The danger of this whole thing, that some of these guys will actually have some atomic bombs at some point.
I hear what you're saying. I think it's disgusting. I think I was telling you right now that in the 1900s, in the First World War and the Second World War even shocked us. You can never understand the human creativity when it comes to killing and dismembering and devaluing
their lives.
Yeah, that level of ingenuity surpasses the ingenuity of making sure we end things like struggles like hunger, and other life-threatening diseases like HIV and AIDS. So if we were putting our energies towards that, we'd be able to alleviate ourselves. But personally, I'm very worried because this is not just unique to Africa. We have seen some of the American ideas on what they think the way forward should be, and you can tell that in the back of this mind there's a little bit of redundance, and this redundance is quick to gain traction, and it's something that we need to fight. But we're unable to because we have forgotten our principles of dialogue. You see, some things brought us together, but they pushed us far apart, like social media. So for people to be that free to threaten a human life on a public platform, it must show you that there is a sense of empowerment and a sense of support that this person feels, that you don't even feel I can say the shame of threatening to kill somebody solely on their existence. It's not,
and the stupidity as well.
Yeah. So even when we adopted the struggle, it was based on those values that, you see, the South African values, I think That's why I said when the aliens come, they must come here when they say, who are your leaders? Because we are the true human rights champions. Because we believe in seeing a human being for who a human being is. And when we heard about the struggle of your people in the DRC, we also got pissed off at the fact that this thing is happening however many years after the tragedies of the genocide in Rwanda and your own massacres that you've had in the bordering areas of the Eastern DRC. And we look at this and we say, as Africans, we stay on, this is the same soil. You're just further up. Or maybe further down. We don't know how the map is actually, but we're on the same soil. So for us to ignore what's happening to you, what's stopping you from ignoring it when it happens to me? You see? So we started thinking it from that perspective. And then secondly, we're like, but you're also human. And we don't condemn just because it's you. We condemn it totally. Because we cannot sit in an environment with all the challenges that we have. And we are still worried about what kind of nose you have, how tall you are. That thing is the most regressive thing I've ever heard. And in the current environment where we're contending with technologies that are taking people's jobs, we're still trying to think about planning to end hunger in Africa. But we still have these separations. You know, when you hear of people being burned alive and then you think these are stories, but they're happening now, you know, and just because of their phenotype. And we've seen some remnants of it happening in our country as well. So, I mean, I think it's quite terrible that people still do that thing. In fact, I remember when we released our statement, I was also personally threatened and attacked. You know? And I was thinking, how could you have the energy to threaten and attack me on a platform like this? When we can just check, you're probably chatting from a European country or here, even in South Africa, to give me that opinion. I mean, why would we keep such a bigot in our society? And the fact that we have suspended dialogue is part of the reasons why we're in this trouble. Because now we're unable to understand why people are different. Some people are different for cultural reasons, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't embrace each other. I mean, no, man. We need to find a way for universal love. So maybe the aliens come, we stop fighting today.
No.
I'm telling you, if they come today, all of us will be one thing.
No, I think, man, I'm lucky enough I met you deal with, that's why I started with the youth. I wanted to know your general understanding of the youth sentiments in terms of their approach and so on. But I think you're in a place of privilege in terms that you should be able to do something, not for me or us, but whenever you have the opportunity to actually correct such mistakes, you must act on it. I mean, there's passion in doing that, because you can see the danger. I mean, your kids, you've got kids. This thing is not going anywhere. So yeah, hopefully you'll be able to do that. If you pursue politics, if I could vote, I would vote. But anyone voting, I think we'd rather go with the devil that we know. We know politicians as well. When you get there, you betray. But at least if you have that spirit, I think it's a very good start.
Yeah, thank you.
But that attention, please, do look at it. And if we ever get a chance, we can explore it together again. And thank you so much for coming over. I think we've exhausted our time here.
All right. No, thank you so much. I love the fact that you gave me an opportunity to think. You know, we take so much time. We read books, we work on our bodies. But when do you ever take time to think? So I think I'm glad that I got to be on this platform, because now I got to think and open my mind. Although we have to discuss about the programming when we get out of here. But I think my parting word now is, as South Africans, we need to invest more in our peace methods. And we don't have the money to go out there with guns and all of that, but we do have one weapon, which is our dialogue and our commitment to it, because we believe in human beings and who they are. So if you look at the history that we've had, it is unfathomable that we could just have a commission where we just tell the truth and then that's it. Bygones are bygones. But even though it doesn't make a lot of sense to some other people, but I think it's an exercise that we must all do, even internally, at home, you know, and continentally, definitely we need to, because there is a greater benefit of African unity and possibly global unity, so that we can fight other diseases. I mean, we still have people dying from malaria. I mean,
Can you
think about
imagine
it.
that?
So before busy fighting and worrying about what this one looks like, and it don't help us. We need to band together and fight real battles like poverty, you know, so unemployment. But we can't still be fighting how people talk, and no. We need a bigger kind of unity.
Yeah.
So for that to happen, we need dialogue. So whether it's dialogue between presidents, dialogue between neighbors, but we need that dialogue so that we can embrace our differences. It's not about me having a dominance over you or you having dominance over me, but it's me having to get an insight and an understanding of what you do. So this is also inclusive of, you know, white Africans and other different tribes. I mean, we have 4,000 dialects, over 2,000 cultures. All these cultures need to talk to each other, and we need to reach a consensus of understanding.
Yeah.
Then once we have a consensus of understanding,
Action, I think
Then-
proper action.
then better actions towards ourselves will be better. And we'll realize that we only have ourselves.
Yeah.
Then once we've reached that realization, hopefully we can come together. Or the aliens can come in. We all.
They're taking too long.
Thanks, my man.
Thank you
They're
so
taking
much.
too long, man.
Thank you very much for everyone for being with us. Again, I apologize for taking so long to do this. By the way, this is the end goal of this project, is to have that dialogue, not just online, but eventually it's to have physical places where people don't have to worry about money or what's not. At least for a very short period, they can then do the observation and come out maybe better. So these are some of the first few people that are watching. Hopefully we make it more physical in the future. But thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you next time.